Hello friends, today we are making a rich peanut butter soup or groundnut butter soup as it's called. So without further ado, let's get cooking. We've got a red onion, ginger, some aniseeds, fennel and 3 cloves of garlic, and we're going to blend this all together to season our chicken, which you'll see in an instant. So these are aromatics needed to season the hard-boiled chicken that we have in a pot right here. And I have 2 chicken pieces there actually that have been chopped up at the butcher's, and I'm just seasoning it with some all-purpose seasoning, everyday seasoning, and adding the blended aromatics. And I went ahead and added a little bit of water to the container just to rinse it all off, and we're going to let this boil for a while. So this is hard-boiled chicken, it does take a while to cook, so just make sure that you go back to it occasionally to stir it. So in here we have our peanut butter paste, and I ended up using the whole container. And what I'm doing here, I just added it to a pot, and I'm adding some hot water to dissolve the whole lot, and this is also going to cook on the stove. So this is the easiest way to do it. Some people just cook the paste first before adding the water, but I thought it was easier to add the paste, then the hot water, and add the whole thing to the stove. So I'm going to end up adding a little bit more hot water in here. It's entirely up to you how much or how little water you want to add. It just depends on how thick you want your soup to be. So I believe I ended up adding about 4 to 5 cups of water, but I'll put the exact measurements in the description box. So going back to our chicken, which has been boiling for about 30 minutes, it's far from done. So I'm just checking now to see if it's done. The chicken is still quite tough, so we're going to let this boil on medium heat further down. Meanwhile, I'm also checking on the peanut butter, and as you can see, it's boiling, and I'm stirring it constantly because I want to avoid it burning too much at the bottom. I mean, you might end up with a little bit of burn, but that's normal. Just make sure that you keep stirring it so that there's not too much burn. And you want to cook it until the oil starts forming at the surface. So if you can see that it's risen at the top, and that's a surefire indicator that your peanut paste is cooked. I left my chicken to cook for an hour because I like it to be really nice and soft, and at this point it's done. It's rendered all these amazing juices, so it's ready to receive the peanut paste that we cooked earlier. So you dump the whole lot into the chicken and make sure that you also add a little bit more water. So if you want this thickness, that's perfectly fine. I wanted it to be a little bit more thin, so I added a bit more hot water to it until I received the desired consistency. Once the soup has started to come to a boil, I'm now going to add these 4 small tomatoes as well as this big onion. So if you have a big tomato, then just add this. I didn't have any, so I just went in with these 4 pieces. And we're going to let this boil. So the idea here is to ensure that the vegetables or fruit and vegetable soften up so that we can blend them and return them into the soup. About 15 minutes later, the tomatoes and onion are nice and soft, so I'm just going to fish them out of the soup, blend them, and return them back as mentioned. Make sure that you rinse your container so that you don't waste any of this goodness. And now we're just going to stir this all up, and you can see the oil is starting to form at the top, which tells you that it's almost done. So I'm just going in to taste it a little bit, and I needed a little bit more all-purpose seasoning, which I went ahead and added, and that's all that was required. You don't need a lot of ground seasoning for this soup. There's so much freshness in it that it's fine by itself. So in here we have what we call Wagashi, or cottage cheese or fried milk. So this is our national cheese, also enjoyed in Ghana, Togo, and Benin. So I'm adding this in because where we come from, we tend to add this into our soups, and it is absolutely delicious. So keep your eyes peeled. I'm going to drop a recipe on how I achieved this cheese at a later point. So Adding this in, letting this come to a boil, and now also going in with some okra, which is a nice touch from back home as well, and finishing off with a scotch bonnet pepper. So at this point the soup is almost done. We're just going to let this cook for a further 5 minutes to ensure that the okra softens up nicely. Meanwhile, I'm going ahead to cook our fufu, or fufui as we call it back home, and this is the cassava and green plantain one, and I really love having peanut butter soup with fufu. I prefer it this way. I know a lot of people like to have it with omotuo, so the rice balls, or banku, or yam. You can have it with anything really, it's quite versatile, but I love it with fufu because it reminds me of back home when we used to have it coming back from church. So I'm just arranging these into bowls now, and we're almost ready to plate our fufu up. Our soup is ready to be enjoyed, and my daughter was commenting on how nice the house smelled, and she said make sure that you tell them that the house smelled really nice. So I'm telling you this now. This is a message from my daughter. So I'm just plating up, putting a little bit of okra, and let's not forget this delicious wagashi. I can't wait to show you this recipe. Actually, I had to perfect it quite a bit, but you love it. So if you enjoyed watching this recipe, please give me a big thumbs up. I really enjoyed giving you the narrative of my version, and I'll see you very soon on my next video. Thank you for watching.